Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Ross Town Council, Thursday, February 10, 2022. Item number 1 is the call to order and roll call.
Yes, so Councilmember Breckus,
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher,
Here.
Councilmember Cool,
Here.
Councilmember McMillan,
Here.
and Mayor Robbins.
Aye, here. Sorry. Item number 2, posting of the agenda. Has the agenda been posted?
Yes, it has.
Item number 3, minutes. Linda, were there any corrections to the minutes or is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I didn't hear from anyone, so I don't know that there's any corrections.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher,
Aye.
Councilmember Cool,
Aye.
Councilmember McMillan,
Aye.
and Mayor Robbins.
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Item 4, employee appreciation and recognition of town employee recreation manager Gretchen Castitz. Town manager Krista Johnson.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's my pleasure to recognize one of the town's employees that has served the community for 5 years now. Our recreation manager, Gretchen Castitz, joined Ross Recreation in November of 2016 as an administrative clerk and was promoted several times, ultimately to recreation manager. Gretchen now oversees the department and she ensures that the programs are run effectively and efficiently to provide the best possible recreation opportunities for all ages of the Ross community and beyond. She's also been partnering with Age-Friendly Task Force of Ross and works to create a community that is responsive to the needs of all of our community members. So thanks again to Gretchen for your significant efforts throughout the year.
Yes, Gretchen, thank you so much. I think that
Yeah.
Ross Rec is running so well and the age-friendly group, it basically didn't exist until you came. I mean, there had been a lot of work, but you've really taken it to the next level. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed working with you, Gretchen, on the age-friendly group, and I've certainly come to know that you're somebody that can be counted on to pick up the ball and carry it somewhere. I'm also impressed by the fact that I learned, and I think I have this right, that you're the 5th generation of your family to live in your house in Fairfax.
Yep, that's
Wow.
right.
Wow.
My kids are the 6th.
Whoa. Gee.
Wonderful. Well, Gretchen, thank you so much for everything you do for the town, especially all of, when you're called on to help staff events that aren't during working hours and you have young children and you somehow come through all the time for the town. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I just want to say thank you to all of you for your support. Coming into this position during COVID is, not always the easiest of things, but I've always felt supported by the council and the town managers and the rest of the staff. And we really work as a team to get through challenging times, and it's made it so wonderful to work for this community and you guys and everybody. So much appreciation. And the age-friendly has definitely been one of my most special projects to work on with such wonderful people, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And I'm excited to see now that we're getting, hopefully moving forward a little bit, things that we can continue to do and bring more people in to be part of that. So thank you guys very much for all of your support.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 5 is open time for public expression. This is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and it's on items not on the agenda. And since these are items not on the agenda, the council can't discuss or deliberate these items. Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment?
I see one raised hand, so I'll bring them in. That's Hadley Mullen. Go ahead, Hadley.
Good evening, Mayor Robbins and council members. My name is Hadley Mullen and my husband, Dan Califatis, and I live at 20 Glenwood with our 3 children. And we lived in Ross since 2007. I'm also a devoted volunteer of a Treasured Ross nonprofit, which is the Branson School, where I'm treasurer of the Board of Trustees and I chair the Finance Committee. And I want to personally thank you as a town resident for all the time and careful consideration you've put into this matter. I'm here tonight, though, to express my serious concerns with one proposed condition for Branson's amended use permit, which is the immediate student enrollment rollback penalty if there's a traffic count violation. And to me, this penalty seems highly problematic as I think about Branson's finances and also the human toll. I feel as though this the enrollment penalty is out of proportion. The impact on our finances is out of proportion to the traffic impact it seeks to remedy. And as of Tuesday night's hearing, the council members had asked about the financial impact that the proposed conditions would have on the school. So I thought I'd walk you through, with my finance hat on, a hypothetical scenario. So let's suppose that after the proposed 8-week monitoring period, Branson is over the weekday traffic cap by 10 vehicle trips. That's 5 cars in and out. And under your proposal, we would lose 4 students for the next year for exceeding the daily trip count by 1%. Assuming $50,000 in tuition per student, that's a revenue hit for us of $200,000. We just don't operate on much margin as a nonprofit. In other words, we are paying $20,000 per trip in excess of our 900 and some odd daily trip allowance. This is the equivalent of 2 senior teacher salaries, or importantly, 4 full financial aid scholarships. Some members of the council have expressed that you don't want to impose financial fines on the school, but I wanted to just highlight that the rollback provision that you proposed is effectively a much harsher fine than the $50,000 and $100,000 penalties in the TDMP. And sticking with this example, let's consider the $200,000 financial impact against the neighborhood impact of 10 extra trips per day. If it's the equivalent of 1 car per hour on Fernhill over the course of a school day, it just doesn't feel to me that this extremely minor traffic impact should cost Branson losing $200,000 per extra trip. I'm sorry, $20,000. And as a financial steward for the school, the whipsaw effect of reducing enrollment from year to year makes it really hard for us to plan. And it's going to make it really hard to maintain our staff when they know at any one year we're going to have to, potentially fire folks in order to pay what is effectively an extremely high fine for as much as a foot fault over our measurement period.
I'm sorry that the 3 minutes are up. Can you try to wrap up your comments?
Sure. And again, thank you for your time. And it's for these reasons that I ask you tonight to please reconsider your proposed rollback penalty. To our knowledge, it is unprecedented in the school arena, and its financial impact is excessive and really burdensome to the school, its students, its faculty, and staff. We're so close as a group.
Kelly, I think you need to finish. It's over 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda, are there other speakers?
I don't see any raised hands, Mayor.
Then let's move on. Item 6 is the mayor's report. The Ross Town Council is on track to approve Branson's application to amend its existing use permit to increase student enrollment. The town requires use permits for non-residential use of property in residential neighborhoods. Last March, Branson filed an application to amend condition number 1 of its use permit to increase the school's enrollment from 320 to 420 students. This followed voter approval of Measure F in March 2020, which allowed a total student enrollment of up to 420 students, subject to the approval of a use permit by the town council. A key element of Branson's campaign was its promise to keep traffic net neutral with any enrollment increase. Branson's current use permit dates from 1978, when Branson, which started as a small girls' boarding school, transitioned to a larger school with an enrollment of 320 students. The use permit established conditions to ensure that the school's impact on the neighbors and the town didn't increase as Branson grew. At its January meeting and at a special meeting February 8, the council indicated that the enrollment increase could be 100 students, 25 per year over 4 years as requested by Branson, and that the enrollment increase was exempt from CEQA based on no net increase in traffic. The council discussed whether existing conditions in the use permit needed to be updated. The most important conditions of approval relate to Branson's promise to keep traffic net neutral. The school has developed a comprehensive plan to achieve this. Much of the discussion has focused on how to monitor and enforce the plan to ensure that traffic is maintained at current levels. The council is expected to consider whether to approve Branson's application at its continued special meeting, February 15, starting at 8:30 a.m., bringing this process to a close. This will allow Branson to send out offers of admission next month, consistent with the approved use permit. Item 7, council committee and liaison reports. Are there any? All right. Item number 8, staff and community reports, starting with Krista Johnson, town manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've got two brief announcements for you. At the urging of numerous residents and due to the extraordinary amount of sunshine and warmth we received in the month of January, we were able to open most of the common field to recreational use yesterday. Just a small remaining portion of the field needs a little more time and isolation before it can be reopened. Big thanks to Public Works Director Rich Simonich and Public Works Maintenance Supervisor Anthony Alcazar for getting this done. And big thanks to RPOA and the Ross Auxiliary for donating $500 towards the additional costs required to open up the field earlier than the rest of the field. So that's super great and such a warm day. Nice to see everyone out there using the field today. Secondly, just another update for you about the electric vehicle charging stations across the street. I reported a month ago that they were in the process, but it's been firmed up that. So if you recall, last October, you approved the installation of 3 new electronic vehicle charging stations for public use at the post office parking lot. Over half of the cost of the purchase and installation of the stations will be funded by grants from TAM Measure B and Marine Clean Energy EV station rebate programs. So the EV stations are scheduled to be available for public use this spring. I executed the agreement this afternoon. So that's something to look forward to. And that's it. Thank you for the opportunity to report.
Thank you. The next is Ross Property Owners Association. Is there a report from RPOA? Linda?
Well, I don't see any raised hands. If RPOA is out there, raise your hand, please. No, Mayor, I don't see anyone.
That's fine. I mean, the biggest news is what Town Manager Johnson just reported, that we were able to get the field opened early. The next item 9 is the consent agenda. Do any members of the council want to take any items off the consent agenda? Do any members of the public want to take any items off the consent agenda? Raise your hand if you do.
No raised hands.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
And the consent agenda items A through I pass unanimously.
Thank you. Item 10 is public hearings on planning projects, part 1. 10A is 36 Glenwood Avenue, design review and town council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2236. Town planner Weintraub.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Robbins and council members. I'll provide a brief oral presentation to this project. 36 Glenwood Avenue, the project is design review for a new accessory building, which is not a dwelling unit, it's an art studio, and also new landscape structures. The project does comply with all the zoning regulations. The ADR group recommends approval. Written comments have been received from the owner at 41 Glenwood Avenue regarding concerns about construction activity and potential impacts in the neighborhood. And staff has reviewed the comments and very well thought out. And thank you to the property owner for those comments. At this time, staff is recommending that the issues that are raised in the comments and that are within the purview of permit regulation can actually be addressed by the existing municipal code regulations and by standard the standard condition of approval, not number 9, which contains subsections A through W, and by follow-up monitoring by town staff, and that no additional conditions are needed for this project. And so at this time, staff recommends approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of council member, like from council members of town staff? Then we will open it up. Does the applicant want to make any comments either now or after? And if not now, there's an opportunity after the public comment. Let's move to public comment. Do any members of the public want to make a comment?
I'm bringing in Bob Dickinson.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Mr. Weintraub. Bob Dickinson, 41 Glenwood Avenue. It feels like Groundhog Day, not because we were together for 5 hours on Tuesday evening, but because of yet another construction project on Glenwood Avenue. We support the construction project at 36 Glenwood. Here are my messages and conditions. Construction fatigue. At 41 Glenwood, we've endured major construction projects on adjacent or nearby properties for 14 consecutive years. Needless to say, we're really tired of endless construction. Successful construction project involves 3 legs of a stool: neighbors, applicant, and town. Neighbors. In addition to the construction fatigue, you now have photo evidence of inconveniences, disruptions, and damage to our property from other construction projects on Glenwood. If this doesn't reinforce our importance as one of the legs, I don't know what does. Applicant. As stated, we support the construction project at 36 Glenwood. The why and what. We would like to make as a condition of approval the development of a construction management plan, the how, mutually agreed upon by the applicant and affected neighbors before construction begins. Such a construction management plan was developed by applicants and approved by the town at 4 other properties on Glenwood. Exhibit A to my email listed updated conditions we expect in such a construction management plan. The general contractor reached out to me last evening with his proposed edits, and I look forward to reviewing them and meeting to finalize a mutually agreeable plan. As communicated by the applicant this week, quote, I think you know that the property manager, the general contractor, and I truly want to do right by the neighbors, end quote. I trust them. Town. The third leg is the town. There exists a tremendous lack of enforcement regarding compliance with the municipal code and construction plans, due process for expanding project scope, and minimization of allowable project timeframes. Compliance and enforcement. Neighbors should not be forced to fend for themselves and initiate calls involving lack of compliance and enforcement during construction. Exhibit B in my email reinforces as much. Scope. The Glenwood project currently underway stipulated only minor construction to the west side of the house, along with a pool house and driveway. The town, however, allowed additional major changes to scope in the front of the house, all without public notices or hearings. The town violated the original permit. Timeframe. The original home at 36 Glenwood was constructed spanning 6 years, well past the allowable timeframe. A successful construction project needs to balance all 3 legs of the stool. We would simply request to not be adversely affected by a project that stays within the proposed scope and is completed on time. The town needs to do its part to make sure that happens. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Linda, are there others, members of the public who would like to speak?
There was a raised hand, but it's not there anymore. Oh, it's back. There we go. Eric Seufer, I'm bringing in.
Hello, members of council. I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Dickinson's comment. We look forward. We're in process of scheduling a meeting with him to
Hmm.
Where did
Linda,
he
are you
go?
able to bring him back in?
Where did he go?
And Rich, when he starts, maybe when he comes back, if you could restart his time clock, please. Looks like he's.
Am I
Eric,
back?
All right,
sorry,
let's
you're
start
back.
over. Okay, go.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly just respond to Mr. Dickinson's comment, and that we look forward to working with him to come up with a really good, solid agreement. And it's going to be a really smooth project. I don't anticipate any issues to Mr. Dickinson or the surrounding neighbors. I think it's going to be really smooth. And Bob has my number, and we'll be in constant contact about the project to make sure there's no inconvenience to him or the surrounding neighbors.
Thank you.
I don't see any other raised hands, Mayor.
Then let's bring it back to the council for deliberation. Are there any comments or questions or opinions of council members? Is there a motion about this project?
Could I just
I
ask a
move.
question?
Yes.
Can we make the approval contingent on a agreement between Mr. Dickinson and the owner at 36 Glenwood?
Ben, is that something that,
Yeah, I would recommend making it contingent on a third-party approval. Right now, condition, I believe it's 9H. Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, 9H. The plan submitted for a building permit shall include a detailed construction and traffic management plan for review and approval of the building official, consultation with the town planner and police chief. And I think you can give direction on that condition that the town planner should reach out to the neighbors to make sure the construction plan is adequate.
do you want to do that, Julie? Just add that the town planner reaches out to the neighbors to be sure the plan is adequate, to see if the plan is adequate, but it wouldn't be a condition of, the reach out is the condition of approval, not the plan.
Matthew, does that seem adequate to you?
Yes, I think it does. And I think, I think as written, I can take that direction, and I don't think it actually requires revising the condition. So I think the condition as written can incorporate that direction. Yeah.
Councilmember Breckus.
Sorry, there's law on the books that says you cannot make neighbor consent a condition of approval, and it's really clear. And so, a condition that requires staff, or if it needs to be a condition, it could be direction, but like that to have some conversation around this is totally fine. But if we made it a condition of approval, I think it really violates that law. So that would be the problem.
Well, we don't want to do that.
Thank you. Other comments, or is there a motion?
I'll move to approve. And
Second.
Okay, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember McMillan?
I
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'm recused from the next item, 21 Fernhill. So Mayor Pro Tem Cool will run the meeting, and I will step out.
Okay, we're on item 11, which is 21 Fernhill. Matthew, do you want to give us your report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. The project at 21 Fernhill Avenue is a request for design review for residential remodel of the existing single-family home and new landscaping primarily in the rear of the home. A variance of a relatively minor nature is requested for the new pool in the rear yard setback, and that is supported by neighbors. And there is also a separate application on the books for a detached ADU, which is subject to administrative approval, so is not part of this project. ADR Group has reviewed the project and recommends approval. They do support the pool location and the variance request from a design review perspective. They've also reviewed the potential ADU location, and while it's not within their purview to make a binding comment, they believe it's also located in a good location. And so based on that, staff recommends approval, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions for Matthew? Julie?
I just want to point out that we're on item 10B, not 11.
Oh,
Mayor Pro
okay.
Tem.
You're quite right. Thank you for the correction. All right, does any other member of the council have a similarly trenchant comment? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. Linda, is there anyone with their hand up to comment on this item?
No, there is not. No.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council for deliberation and a motion. Does anyone have any comment with regard to this item? Any member of the council? Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 2237.
Second.
Okay, Linda, let's take a vote.
How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
And Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
And Councilmember Cole?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, do we have a means of letting the mayor know that she should return?
Mayor, are you out there? There she is.
Oh, now we're at item number 11, Town Council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2240, approving the First Amendment to the amended and restated franchise agreement between the town of Ross and Marin Sanitary Service. Town Manager Krista Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is a resolution that approves the First Amendment to the amended and restated franchise agreement between the town of Ross and Marin Sanitary Service. As you might recall that Senate Bill 1383 was approved by the legislature a handful of years ago. It sets a target to divert 75% of organic waste from landfills and to recover 20% of edible food for human consumption by 2025. Senate Bill 1383 requires all jurisdictions in California to adopt a mandatory organics recycling ordinance. You have already done that, yay, you did that in December. The ordinance requires establishment of enforceable requirements for organic waste generators, for haulers such as Marin Sanitary Service, and contains similar language to all the other jurisdictions in Marin County. Ross's franchise agreement with Marin Sanitary, it sets the services and the standards for the company to conduct waste management activities and to bill customers in Ross. Senate Bill 1383 establishes specific services and ways to provide those services by waste haulers and requires updates to the franchise agreement. The amendment reflects the additional requirements related to Senate Bill 1383. A summary of the items proposed in the amendment include, and don't worry, I won't say all of them, I'll just give a little highlights. A full rollout of 3 container waste collection to all customer types. They're going to have new container labels to meet the Senate bill standards. They're going to have to do quite a bit of outreach and education, including the development and distribution of educational materials. They're going to have to evaluate a waiver request for exemption from the requirement to subscribe from Recycling Organic Service. And they're going to have to help us do quite a bit of reporting. They're going to have to do quite a bit of reporting to the town and the state on compliance activities. The proposed amendment that is before you tonight was prepared by R3 Consulting Group in consultation with staff from the Marin cities and towns that contract for service with Marin Sanitary. The amendment template prepared by R3 was then tailored to the town of Ross, and it is attached to the proposed resolution as Exhibit A. Several representatives of Marin Sanitary Service are attending tonight's meeting. If the council has questions regarding the proposed amendment to the franchise agreement that I'm not able to answer. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Do any council members have questions for Krista Johnson? Councilmember McMillan.
Yeah, thank you, Krista. I'm not sure if you can answer this or if the Marin Sanitary people can answer this, but I was just a little confused about the waiver thing. It looks like the town is the one who decides whether someone gets a waiver, but the rules for the waiver are going to be developed by Marin Sanitary. And I just wanted a better understanding of what would allow someone to get a waiver.
Sure. I am going to punt this to our representatives from Marin Sanitary. So we've got several of them. Linda, are you able to pull any of them in?
Yes, I'll bring them in.
Thank you very much. So just be a second.
So Patty Garbarino's here, Jason Raleigh, and Ruben I'm bringing in.
Hello.
Hello, Patty. We hear you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate it. And thank you, council members. And we very much look forward to serving the town and making this compliance happen for you. And we're prepared to do that. As far as the waiver goes, I'm going to defer to my colleagues who are on the call tonight. Justin Wilcock, who is our general manager of operations, is on this call as well, and he's very familiar with that regulation. And I'm assuming he's in your queue as well. Also, Ruben Hernandez, in charge of legislation and analysis for us as well. Jason Raleigh is our CFO. So with that, I'll step back and allow them to answer the question for you. And thank you for allowing us to serve you with this unfunded mandate. We appreciate your faith in us.
Just to briefly answer your question, Councilmember McMillan, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to answer questions and be here tonight. The waiver process is the allowance for the waiver is set by CalRecycle. And so there's two factors that are considered when allowing a waiver. One, if they don't have space for extra containers, then that would be one reason for a waiver. The other would be a de minimis amount of organic material. So for a business that produces 2 cubic yards of total waste, they have to have 2 yards or more. They can have less, if they have less than 20 gallons of organic material, then they can receive the waiver. If the business produces 2 cubic yards or less of total waste, then if they have 10 gallons or less of organic material, then they can receive that waiver as well. So our role in this is we are developing the waiver form. It will be consistent through all of our jurisdictions. We'll be working with the businesses that either we believe could have qualified for the waiver or who request to be evaluated. And then we will make a recommendation to the town but ultimately the CalRecycle has said the approval of the waiver does rest with the jurisdiction. So for the town in this case.
Thank you. Julie, do you have other questions?
So it's the waiver is largely going to be for commercial entities.
It is just commercial and I believe multifamily can apply as well, but yes, it's geared for commercial. It's not geared for residential.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Krista or for the Marin Sanitary staff? Ruben, your hand is up. Oh, no, guess not. Okay.
Just to make a quick clarification on for MFTs, the waiver will apply only for physical space restrictions, but not the de minimis, because MFTs will have food scraps no matter what, more that will be over that threshold that Justin mentioned. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Let's open this item to the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
There's no raised hands, Mayor.
Okay, then let's bring this back to council to deliberate. Any comments? And if no comments, could someone make a motion, please?
I'll move to approve resolution number 2240.
Second.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And Patty, thank you to you and your staff for coming.
Thank you very much. Good
Yes,
evening.
thank you.
Take care.
So we're at item number 12, Town Council consideration of the formation of a Town County Services Subcommittee under the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members, the MCCMC, and consideration of council representation on the subcommittee. Town Manager Johnson.
My apologies. I
can introduce this. I'm
that
happy
would be
to.
great. Thank you. Thank you.
So at the MCCMC meeting, you may remember there was in the packet and then voted on at the meeting was for a new subcommittee. MCCMC has lots of subcommittees, but this one was voted in. I voted to abstain because the vote at MCCMC was taken before we could talk about it as a council. So we have two things to discuss, whether we want this subcommittee and who would like to be on the subcommittee. Here's what the subcommittee is. The background is, and this was in your packet, that that there are issues such as homelessness, mental health, disaster preparedness, major crimes, police services, and those have produced, as they said, sometimes innovative partnerships between the cities, Marin's 11 cities, and the county. In pursuing these partnerships, though, tension and misunderstanding have occasionally developed, particularly as city leaders try to understand the mandates, commitments, and funding sources of the county. And so basically, this is a committee to take a look at the items that are county-wide, that cities are often asked to help support, such as homelessness or major crimes task force. And the goal of the committee is to better understand the services that are provided by the county and how they are funded, and try to see where is the line between what should be provided by the county in terms of funding and what should be provided by the cities. I actually think that this is an excellent idea so that's the committee. I think it's an excellent idea. As you know, every time homelessness comes up, well, not that so much, but major crimes task force comes up, I'm always saying, why should we be contributing to this? It's an important service, but it's countywide, and this should come out of the county's budget. And so, and more recently, the homeless subcommittee, there is a lot of county funding for this and some COVID funding for this, but cities are also asked to contribute money. And many people have said, of course, these are important issues, but they're countywide issues, and shouldn't this come out of the county's budget? And I actually agree with that. And so I think that it's my opinion that this is a very useful committee, because I think that what it does is it helps the cities throughout the county kind of come together and see what's right to come out of our budgets and what should we ask the county to keep in its budget. And I would be happy to be on the committee, since it's something that I bring up every time we're asked to fund the Major Crimes Task Force. But I'm also happy to let somebody else be on it if they want to. First question is, do we want to join this subcommittee?
May I address somebody?
Yes.
I'm on the MC Homeless Committee and have been since its inception. I think I was mayor at the time it was started, and so I said, okay, I'll be the one. But Julie was representative for I dumped it on her for as long as I could, but I'm back on it now. I think we need a couple of corrections to what you've said, Mayor. First of all, the major crimes activity has been disbanded. It doesn't exist anymore. But there still are looming a number of areas where the county is going to ask the cities, or is asking the cities, to contribute to what are arguably solution of countywide problems. And it's been your position that the county shouldn't be doing that. They should pay for countywide problems. The second correction is that, as I understand it, this committee is a short-term committee. It's expected to last for about 6 months to kind of look at the process that's going on here of the county coming to the cities and towns and asking them to contribute money and take a look at the overall picture of whether that's right or not. I happened, out of boredom last night, to have Channel 20, or maybe it was the night before, to have Channel 27 on when Novato's City Council was addressing this issue. And one of their comments was, why do we need a separate committee? Couldn't the homeless committee handle this? I think, I'm not sure what their outcome was, but I'd have to say and that's just for information. I'd have to say that I agree that it's worthwhile having this committee, because I think for exactly the reasons that Mayor Robbins has expressed, it's an issue that ought to be considered. How should this be done? And I also agree that Mayor Robbins is the appropriate person to serve because she has an interest in this process. Although if she doesn't want to, which sounds like it's not the case, I'd be happy to handle it. Anyway, that's what I know about this, and I'm in favor of it.
So now up to two people can be on the committee from each town. Councilmember Breckus.
Well, we've had conversations before where we've talked about whether we should be cautious as a small council that does planning commission work as well about, creating subcommittees and joining subcommittees and encouraging the creation of subcommittees. And so, of course, that was my lens when I looked at this. I do agree with everything that Councilmember Kuhl said and that you said, and that it's relevant and important. I question why we need two. I mean, the idea
it can be up to two.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it would be more appropriate. I like the fact that it's temporary. I think it would be more appropriate for it to be one and not be, something that one person reports back, because I want the information for sure. But I just think that, we could have 6 meetings. We have a $2,000 contribution on homelessness. I mean, 5.
I thought it was more like 10 to 20.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm probably remembering the amount of Major Crimes Task Force, which was very modest. But
no, that was 10.
Okay. So I don't quote me on the numbers, folks. But still, I think that, we shouldn't jump into that, but I do agree that it's important. And I think that it would be fine to have one person unless we have someone else dying to serve.
Ben,
If I may, before we continue the deliberations, I think we should open up for public comment to make sure there's no one out there.
oh, yes, thank you, sorry. I should have known that's what your hand was raised for. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
No raised hands, Mayor.
Then if we want to have this subcommittee, do we need a motion or can we just agree to have it and then settle who is going to be on it?
I think it'd be cleaner to have a motion. That's how it's agendized.
Okay.
But let me point out, it's not a subcommittee, it's a committee of the MCCMC.
They
Right.
call it a
so-
subcommittee, Town County Services Subcommittee.
Right, so I'll move to agree that we will appoint one person to the MCCMC subcommittee that's being.
Second,
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
aye.
Councilmember McMillan?
I,
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
And the motion passes to form the committee and have Mayor Robbins as the member.
Councilmember McMillan.
I think we should make a suggestion to the MCCMC people that they should not be forming
Yeah.
stuff, you know, prior to the time that councils have a chance to discuss what their position is.
Yes, I agree. I felt I was the only one who abstained. Everyone else voted, but I didn't feel that anyone, except for the one town, I think Nevada, which discussed it the night before, the others hadn't discussed it. So it's a kind of a quirk of MCCMC, and it doesn't seem in keeping with the Brown Act. It's their practice, but it's an unusual one. Maybe we can bring that up with them. Okay.
I think part of the problem is the MCCMC is not a Brown Act entity.
Oh,
It is
is,
Brown Act,
yeah.
actually. We do follow the Brown Act. There was different questions about that and even like that mayor select committee, but ultimately the determination was it does need to be Brown Act. And then that makes exactly what you're saying, voting really confusing because you can't, if we were at dinner together like we used to be, there were sometimes turning to various people, but that's, you can't really do that. And I have to say, as a past president of the MCCMC, I totally agree with that point that was made, but the only problem is you start your year off and you kind of have these conversations about things, and you probably would only be able to address like 4 issues. If every single time you went back to the council and they had to all agendize it and then come back. So it does make for some tricky things. And it could be one of those things where, we want to talk about, well, what will we agree that the mayor can just, vote on versus what are important enough that we come back to the council, and probably, fiscal impacts or, I don't know, but it's a worthwhile point. I'm just not sure what the great answer is.
I remember the first MCCMC meeting I went to when I got elected to the council. Councilmember Breckus and I were the only 2 there. We're sitting across the table from each other. All of a sudden, they wanted to vote on something, and we didn't know what to do.
You know what it was?
I think we just decided to vote for whatever it was.
Yeah, no, we actually voted against it, Beach.
Oh, that's right. It was Larry Brackbank had some wacky
It
idea.
was GMOs. It was like, and we were like, well, wait, not sure where to go with this. And where are the other council members that might tell us what to do here? Yeah. Good times.
well, let's hope that doesn't come up again, but I'm sure it will. Let's move on to number 13, Town Manager Update and Council Discussion of Town Activities in Response to COVID. Town Manager Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a couple of things. Okay, so we've still got our the state's mask order expires February 16th. Starting February 16th, the mask will be required indoors for unvaccinated or not fully vaccinated individuals, but they'll still be required for all people in public transit, school, and medical settings. So that Marin County is following that. Number two, big news is that Marin first responders will have to be fully vaccinated and boosted for COVID-19 to continue working with the public beginning April 15th. This order, which was issued by Marin County Public Health Office, applies to law enforcement officers, firefighters, medics, and probation officers. First responders will no longer be allowed to avoid vaccinations by getting tested regularly. The only exception will be for those who qualify for a medical or religious exemption. This mandate will not affect current police department employees. We're still, Chief Weber is looking into how much it's going to affect the firefighters in the Ross Valley Fire Department. Earlier this week, the governor signed legislation extending supplemental paid sick leave for workers. It ensures that employees continue to have access up to 80 hours of COVID-19 supplemental paid sick leave through September 30th of 2022. And it can be used by employees who have been advised to quarantine, those caring for impacted family members, and attending a vaccination appointment, etc. The county provided the town with some rapid COVID home test kits, which was welcomed. And each town employee has been offered to bring a few of those back to their homes. We continue to encourage our employees to stay home if they feel ill or they have been exposed to the virus. And we think by having some test kits at home, that could give them the information they need not to come to work. And of course, all Americans are allowed to get 4 tests per household. I know I received mine at my house a few days ago. So that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 14 is the Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project Design Review and Town Council.
Can we ask some questions on 13?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. So first, Julie, Councilmember McMillan, and then Councilmember Cool.
So Mayor Johnson, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, but with the mask mandate being lifted, will we still need to wear masks in the post office? That's been a really sensitive, controversial issue.
I don't know, but we can ask the county health officer.
The postmistress characterizes it as federal property. So before, when the mask mandate was lifted before, she imposed it at the post office. So there's some confusion.
Okay. Councilmember Cool.
My question is, how are we authorized yet to renew having in-person meetings of our council?
I believe that we can have them. I mean, Mill Valley is having them, but that thus far the council has wanted to not have them in person. I know that, before the council is, when you are at the point that you're ready to consider restarting the in-person meetings, it's recommended that you adopt a policy that outlines what that's going to look like in terms of masks and vaccination requirements to enter the council chambers, exemptions, implementation. So when you're ready to have that discussion, I'll just need a little bit of time to be able to prepare that with staff and our town attorney.
Well, having in mind that who knows what's going to happen in the next month with regard to this sort of activity, I'd like to request that it be on the March agenda for consideration that we have open meetings.
I'll second that.
I mean, I understand that it may turn out by the time we get there, it's still not appropriate. But if it is, I'm anxious to get us back to develop a policy and get us back to in-person meetings.
Okay, we'll
Okay.
put that on the agenda.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, now we're at number 14, Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project, Design Review and Town Council Consideration of Adoption of Resolution 2238.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. Sharing my presentation screen. This is the design review application for the Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project. And the objective, of course, is to reduce flood risk in the town of Ross and in neighboring communities. And the objectives and deliberations on the flood risk alternatives were occurred previously last year leading up to the May 13th Ross Town Council recommendation to adopt alternative 1, which avoids impacts to Frederick Allen Park. On August 17th, 2021, the Marin County Board of Supervisors adopted alternative 1 as recommended by the town of Ross and also adopted the EIR for the project. And the purpose of this meeting is not to go back and reopen those deliberations on different types of flood control or alternatives. It's really to look at the fine-grained details of the project that was approved in concept by the council and by the Marin County Board of Supervisors. So that's what the purpose of this design review hearing is. And this hearing also a design review approval would not automatically lead to construction. There's several steps that need to be accomplished also before any construction could begin as well. And go into some of those details a little bit later in the presentation. The project location is in Corte Madera Creek between Lagunitas Bridge and the town limit with Kentfield. Most of the work is actually occurring on the upstream portion identified as Unit 4, very minor work occurring downstream at Unit 3, which is actually adjacent to Frederick Allen Park. The project site includes 9 parcels owned by the Flood Control District, 3 parcels and the bridge right of way, which are owned by the town of Ross, and 5 privately owned residential parcels in this area, which back up to the creek. So the project summary, here's a brief bullet point of the project summary. And I should mention that the Flood Control District will also provide a presentation, go into more details of the project itself. But the summary is to remove the existing wood fish ladder, which is essentially an obstruction to the water flow, regrade, stabilize, and revegetate the creek beds and banks at the existing constriction points. And that would be, again, within this Unit 4 range here, behind the post office, essentially is where that location is. Also remove existing wood retaining walls, which have outlived their usefulness, and extend the concrete wing walls a little further upstream, no higher than the existing grade at the tops of banks. In fact, all of the work is occurring essentially at or below grade within the channel or within the creek bed, and really not visible from public vantage points. And then also downstream, constructing new fish resting pools within the channel. The Advisory Design Review Board reviewed this project and recommended approval on January 18th. Their only caveat was that they asked that when the chain link fence, the portion that's affected in order to construct the project, when it's replaced, that it be replaced with a black vinyl finish and at a 6-foot height in order to match the existing stretch of fence that's there. And that was agreed upon by the applicant. So there's been public notice for all design review projects, 300-foot notice area. The owner of the existing residential property at 29 Sir Francis Drake submitted comments expressing concerns with respect to the area required for the project on his property. Excuse me. And that would be a new easement, a little more than 1,500 square feet for bank stabilization with planted rock slope. And I believe the flood district can provide an update on their communications with the owner and what's required there. So key issues to consider for the council. are preservation, first of all, preservation of Frederick Allen Park. We know that alternative one includes no construction or construction impacts in Frederick Allen Park. That's the way the project was adopted, and that's the way the project is presented here. In terms of effects on trees and landscape, the project would actually revegetate all the stabilized banks and any areas disturbed during construction. It would plant a huge number of new plantings, 79 new native riparian fire-resistant trees, 200 new willow cuttings, and 164 shrubs. And it would only remove 11 existing trees that happen to be growing in the watercourse where they really don't belong. None of them oaks. In terms of fences and walls, they would match existing. As I mentioned, the only really visible feature of this project would be a replacement of the existing chain link fence with new fencing that would have a black vinyl coating. And the extended channel walls would match the existing concrete channel walls that we see now, including the sort of decorative relief band that we see along the top of those channel walls. So essentially be a continuation of what you see today. In terms of flood control, of course, the project would result in reduced flood hazards in the town of Ross. In terms of the properties directly adjacent to where this project could occur, we want to ensure that there's no impact to those as well. So there's a condition of approval for this project that the applicant is going to be required to demonstrate to the town that there's that any impacts caused by an increase would be properly addressed and mitigated, and that there would actually be submittal of a no-rise certification for the project. And lastly, in terms of key issues, because the project does occur on property that's not owned by the flood district, some of it owned by the town and some of it owned by private property owners, there are conditions to require construction agreements prior to construction occurring, including a memorandum of understanding that must be approved by the town council, which will describe liability and maintenance responsibilities for town-owned properties. So that is something the town council will see again in the future. Also to record an encroachment agreement to be approved by the Public Works Department for work on town-owned property. And lastly, submit evidence of recorded easements, whether they be temporary or otherwise, to allow for any construction activity to occur on any public or private property that's not owned by the district. So essentially assuring that owners have signed off on improvements before the shovel can hit the dirt, essentially. As far as CEQA review, the project is consistent with alternative one of the EIR for the Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project Phase 1, which was adopted by the Marin County Board of Supervisors as the lead agency. The town of Ross is a responsible agency. Alternative one avoids impacts on visual quality, biology, noise, traffic, and recreation by avoiding construction in Frederick Allen Park. The project as submitted is consistent with that finding. The only mitigation measure that the town is on the hook for is addressed here in relation to ensuring that there be adequate replacement of any native trees that are removed as part of the project. And the town has reviewed the project and determined that it goes well above the required replacement ratio for any native trees that are being removed for this project. And so the permits requested are just a design review permit for a number of different threshold activities that are reached here, and I won't go through them all, but essentially the code does require a design review permit to be approved for these improvements. That's the only permit required. And so to conclude, staff does recommend adoption of resolution number 2238, approving design review for the Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project Phase 1. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer questions. And I believe Joanna Dixon with the Flood District would also like to present information to provide just some more visuals on the project and some more background. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Should we start with questions for you, or should we have Joanna present and then do questions for both of you? Let's have Joanna present because then all of the information will have been presented. Linda, can you bring in Joanna Dixon, please, and any of the other staff for the project who'd like to be panelists?
Hello, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for having us. I appreciate everyone's time and attention, and this is an exciting moment to get to this point in the project. So thank you for considering the Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project. And unfortunately, Matthew stole most of my thunder with the introduction. He did a very thorough job. So thank you, Matthew. I appreciate all those details that you shared in your project setup here. And I don't have too much more to add other than that this project is grant funded through a grant from the California Department of Water Resources, which currently is set to expire in March of 2023. And we have requested an extension with some political pressure from our Board of Supervisors office and the Congressman's office. So hopefully we'll get an extension in case we aren't able to complete all of the components of the entirety of the project this construction season. But we do plan to move ahead with the components here in this section of Natural Creek Channel in Ross this summer. And I'll just give one quick update. I noticed in Matthew's slides, it says the project starts in June, but most likely we wouldn't be able to begin construction in the natural channel of Ross until July 1st after the birds have fledged their nests. So we're looking at hopefully construction between July 1st and the end of October to do these components of the project here in Ross. And I don't really have too much more to add. So maybe if now is a good time to take questions. And we also have our design consultant representatives from GHD with us tonight are Raymond Wong and Gerhard Epke. And Gerhard has a more detailed presentation with some exhibits and photos to document the survey markings that we have installed within and along the creek to identify individual trees that require removal and locations and heights of the proposed retaining wall structures. So we can let Gerhard give that quick presentation whenever you're ready for that.
I think this would be the perfect time. So go ahead. Thank you.
Go ahead, Gerhard.
Hi, sorry, it took me a second to unmute myself for some reason. Hello, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, can we see this? This is my title page. Yeah, thank you for the good introduction, Matthew. That was great. I guess the purpose of this is just to show some images of where the different design features are located. As you said, the purpose of the project is reducing the flood risk in Ross Common and down Poplar Avenue by removing this wooden flood wall. We call it the fish ladder, but basically this thing that we're looking at here, this is looking towards Ross Common. By doing that, accommodating more water in the creek by using that space that it takes up, and adjusting the creek bed upstream to the creek bed elevation downstream, which essentially means lowering the natural creek bed by a couple feet. And in doing that, we also need to protect the adjacent yards and tops of banks from any instability. So there's some bank stabilization associated with this project. So let's see here. As Matthew mentioned, this is part of a larger project that extends downstream all the way to the end of the concrete channel. We're just focusing on the section up here called Unit 4. There are some improvements to the fish resting pools within the concrete channel in Unit 3. So if there are questions, we can address those, but I'll just focus on the Unit 4 section, which is this area. So to orient you, I'm going to use this as a frame of reference. On the right, this is the fish ladder that we were looking at earlier. It's just a little bit upstream from where Fred Allen Park starts, and there's a porta potty right here. You can look through the chain link fence. And then in the middle of the screen, this is the post office. the creek is running along the bike path here through the middle of the street of the screen. And then the Lagunitas Bridge up here is the upstream extent of the project. So this is the location of the main structural elements of the project, namely retaining walls. We have 3 concrete retaining walls that are in red. The 2 at the downstream end are extensions of the concrete channel. So they extend upstream and flare out, thereby focusing the flows, sort of funneling the water into the concrete channel and allowing the water to keep moving as fast as possible. And then behind the Ross Post Office, we have a similar situation with a concrete retaining wall down along the bank on the Ross Common side. And then on the opposite side of the creek, there's a longer wall that sits lower in the creek bed that is a sheet pile wall. So a metal, like a corrugated metal sheet pile wall that is intended to provide stability for all of the other pre-existing bank stabilization or the pre-existing retaining walls that are there. So hopefully I'll show, you'll get a picture of that in a second, but this has the same effect of funneling and focusing flow into the middle of the channel so that it can continue into the concrete channel. In increasing the velocity and removing that barrier part of the project, captures the beneficial effect of having the channel lower itself. But in order to not have it lower itself too much, we have grade control structures at the upstream and downstream end of this project. So at the upstream end, just near Lagunitas Road Bridge, it's a buried obstruction, basically a big bunch of boulders underneath the gravel bed that prevents too much scour from propagating the impacts upstream farther. And similarly, at the downstream end, there's a big sewer line down here, and we wouldn't want the front lip of the concrete channel to be undercut by too much scour. Here's an example of a grade control structure. So this is a cross-sectional view of how it behaves. It sort of looks like a natural channel. On the right is an example of a recently constructed grade control structure on Ross Creek, just upstream from Shady Lane Bridge. The sanitary district removed the concrete weir that was an obstruction to a fish passage and replaced it with this, which just sort of looks like a natural channel bed with the tops of the rocks poking out. So adjacent to and at the bottom of the retaining walls will be rock slope protection. So these are placed boulders that also help stabilize the channel and creek bank. There'll be plantings interspersed, and you can see a lot of attention is given to the left bank, protecting all the private property backyards from any impacts with rock slope over there. And then similarly adjacent to the new retaining walls on the right bank, the location of the retaining wall on the right bank where my cursor is, and then again here where this concrete wall is, and the grading here is to help open up constrictions. There are sort of two topographic cross-sectional constrictions, and this is one of them where it's a little narrower, and then down here is another big one where it's a little narrower. Higher up the bank where there's less scour, so the tan color is erosion control fabric and vegetated soil lifts to help get the vegetation reestablished and protect erosion. This is a look at where the 11 trees that are coming out are located. Mostly right above the entrance to the concrete channel. In the top right, this is a view looking downstream into the concrete channel. You can see the top of the fish ladder right there. And these are all these trees on the right bank. And this is actually the piece of the channel bank that gets graded back to open up the constriction and allow more flow to get through. So it's not the trees necessarily that are the problem, but also the soil that they're sitting on. Similarly, upstream across from or behind the Ross Post Office, there's these three trees need to be removed because this is where the channel gets opened up here. This is all in the staff report packet. If you want to dive into a closer look at this, these are the proposed plants to be replanted. You know, some larger trees, oaks and alders, and I guess, yeah, oaks and maples and sort of dryland plants that sit higher on the bank that can over time grow to provide a riparian canopy and shade the creek and provide good habitat. And then down on the creek bank and at the margins of the channel, there are bushes like this flowering currant. Lots of willow stakes, like live stakes, get jammed in between the rocks, and sometimes they survive and sometimes they don't. That's why there's like 200 of those proposed. And then rushes and sedges, coffee berries. So this was done by a local landscape architect. I think it looks pretty good. So here, since this came through the Advisory Design Review Board, the next few slides focus on the aesthetic impacts from town. This is the proposed change to the fence. The red dotted line here is an existing 4-foot fence, as well as the orange dotted line is a 4-foot fence. Because there's a new concrete retaining wall going in right here, this section of fence has to get removed, and we're proposing replacing it with a 6-foot fence because it's right at the top of that wall, and proposing moving it towards the creek a little bit to widen the area along the bike path. The views from the Lagunitas Road Bridge, this is looking downstream from Lagunitas Road, and as mentioned, the gravel, which is generally pretty mobile from year to year, this gravel would be expected to lower itself by a foot or two. Otherwise, this area would all look the same. In this slide, I've highlighted where the structural elements of the project are. So farther downstream, there's some rock slope protection, and then the sheet pile wall extending downstream on the left bank. And then this is the area that gets graded back on the right bank. We don't expect it to be very noticeable when the trees have leaves. This is the view from behind the Ross Post Office. So if you walk across the bike path and look over the fence, this is the view, and we've flagged the top of the proposed retaining walls. In the foreground, we have this flagging here representing the top of the concrete wall that is intended to allow grading to happen in the foreground. This tree with the candy stripe ribbon would be one of the 3 up here that's slated for removal, but the wall allows the protection of these other 2 trees here. Looking across the creek, that's the top of the sheet pile wall. It sits about a couple feet off of those existing walls. So the intent is that the sheet pile wall goes all the way across here and protects these other walls from any kind of impacts like being undermined as the creek lowers itself. There's a few more views trying to show what the sheet pile wall would look like. Here's an example of an existing sheet pile wall that's currently on the right bank, right below the Ross Post Office. There's another one here on the top right that's across from Town Hall upstream out of the project area. Another example of a sheet pile wall. So in this picture, I'm trying to help visualize what it might look like on the right, on the far bank. You can see where that flagging is, representing the top of the sheet pile wall, and on the left side of the photo we have the existing sheet pile wall. So yeah, something like this, there's this steel that is weathered and has that nice rusty patina that would exist here on the creek bank, on the far side of the creek bank below the flagging, and presumably down to the water line, because this gravel bar would probably scour out and erode. There'd be changes every year depending on the flows. And then finally at the downstream end, this is at the focus of the project, removing this fish ladder. It would look something like this with the extension of the concrete walls going upstream on both sides, flaring up, flaring out upstream. In the top right, I have a picture of the wooden retaining walls that are currently there. Most of the time they're hidden behind a lot of vegetation, but these would be removed and replaced with these concrete walls. There would be the rock slope protection or riprap that you're seeing in this photo would be moved upstream and sit at a lower elevation, but have a similar look and feel. The center of the creek would have this the grade control structure would be right here, buried in the middle of the transition structure. And then at the top right of this photo, you can see that texturing, that patterning, just from an aesthetic point. Like this is the patterning that we would mimic with the new retaining walls, with the new concrete retaining walls. And I think that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any council members with questions for Matthew or Joanna or Gerhard? Councilmember McMillan.
So just two questions. First, the fire resistant trees. I'm just wondering what I've been taught as a master gardener that there is no such thing as a fire resistant tree, but I've also seen on FireSmart, Firewise landscape, Firewise website, I'm sorry, that they do have a list of trees that are more prone to burning more quickly. And I'm just wondering what you all are thinking are qualifying as fire resistant trees.
I can speak to that. Certainly you're right in that there's no fire resistant trees, but these specific species of trees that we're proposing to plant along the creek are all riparian native trees that do occur within creek areas. And so they're used to drawing up lots of water from the adjacent wetted creek. And I would classify them, even though I'm not an arborist, as a less wildfire susceptible species. But, welcome to compare those to the list that are on the Firewise recommendations.
Yeah, sorry to jump in. I didn't create that plan, but I did, in preparing this application, compare the list with the FireSmart Marin webpage and just confirmed that none of the bad plants, like the fire prone species, are on the list. I think that's what I meant by fire resistant, is that it does not include manzanitas and the things that are expected.
Yeah. Bamboo, all that. Yeah, great. Okay. And my other question is, has any member of the town of Ross participated in the design or the engineering of this project?
That's a good question. It's hard to answer. I know we've had so many public workshops where we, even from the scoping phase of this project, solicited input and comment from the public. I can't think of any specific feature that was identified or modified to meet the requests of a local resident, but I do know that we originally had modified the Frederick Allen Park area quite considerably to meet some of the concerns of the local neighbors that face that section, but that's no longer part of the proposed project.
Yeah, I guess I didn't ask my question.
Sorry.
I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. My question really is, has any member of the Ross town staff participated in the design or the engineering of this specific project? It's my understanding that the answer is no, but I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, Julie, we haven't really had any design input on this project at all so far. So it's all been the county, and they run things by us, and we offer suggestions insofar as it relates to design review at this stage. So.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kircher.
Yes, I have a couple of questions that relate to the chain link fence. There are some members of our community, and I'm one of them, that are not a big fan of the existing chain link fences and have wondered whether it would be possible at some point to upgrade a portion or all of the fence behind the post office and then continuing into Frederick Allen Park. And since work is being done on the fences as part of this project, my question is, would this be an appropriate time for, and I'm not necessarily asking the flood district to do this, but the town, or perhaps the town and some combination of the town or RPOA, coming up with a better solution, assuming there's agreement on that, say a wood fence or something that's a bit more attractive. Would this be a good time to do that? Are there some design problems here or impediments? Who owns the fence? Is that the flood district's property? Is that the town's property? Mechanically, how would this happen if it were to happen? Or are there reasons why it really can't happen? It has to be a chain link fence.
I can sort of answer that a little bit, Joanna, on the fence requirement. So the fence needs to be a chain link, or it can't be a split rail or something like that. We really need to keep folks from going down into the creek at this point. There's no safe access along the banks at that point, so we want to keep it either chain link or something rigid like that to keep people out. So the town maintains the fence, I think, up to the location of the fish ladder area, and then that becomes the county's fence. So we own it behind the post office and maintain it.
So you mentioned split rail fence. Nothing immediately comes to mind, but are you saying that's something that could be climbed over or breached?
Yeah, so we imagine the split rail fence that we put over near the old 6 Redwood property, running along the pathway entering into Roscommon. That's a split rail type fence. It looks great, but you can't keep people from climbing on it or over it.
Is it possible to put something in front of the chain link fence as long as it doesn't interfere with access to the channel for maintenance?
Yeah, I think that would be, you could propose something like that.
Are you talking about vegetation, Bill?
Well, vegetation would be one possibility. Another is a more attractive fence. So you really have two fences. Somebody gets through the first fence, oh, there's a chain link fence. So they're stopped in their tracks. I don't know. I haven't really thought of any specifics. It just has occurred to me that there are other solutions that might look better.
I'll just add that the flood district's concern would be that where we're adding these new taller concrete, well, not taller than the existing concrete, but taller than the existing natural creek bank slope, where we have these concrete walls going in, the drop would be more significant. If anybody were to scale and climb over the existing or future fence, they may have farther drop to fall if they lost their footing, and we wouldn't want anyone to get hurt or fall into the creek when it's raging. If that was the situation, it's in the district's interest, if we're the responsible party for maintaining the fence, to have something that is a longer lasting fence. And in our experience, the chain link material does seem to last the longest and require the fewest repairs and upkeep. You can just replace a small hole and not need to remove the entire fence panel. So that's our typical standard practice, is to use chain link fencing. But certainly, where the fence occurs on town property, the town is more than welcome to have whatever type of fence that you prefer. The district was just looking to minimize cost as far as how much fence as part of this project we would need to replace and then maintain in the future.
Fence behind the post office, that stays as a 4-foot high fence, correct?
Currently, yes.
Okay. I mean, I think people like to look through it and look over it, actually. But the 6-foot fence is intended to be at the top of new flood walls where it would be dangerous to have a 4-foot fence.
Yes.
And they will all be black, I mean, at the moment, they're all planned as black cast on chain link, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McMillan.
Would there be any money in the budget to have a fence that's similar to the wrought iron fence that goes along the Lagunitas Bridge?
Well, that's a quite costly fence upgrade. So I'm inclined to say no.
Are there any other questions for staff? Then let's open this up to members of the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to offer a comment about this item?
No raised hands, Mayor.
Thank you. Then we'll bring it back to the council for deliberation. Bill, that at the ADR meeting, when Joanna presented this to the ADR, the idea of a prettier fence did come up there also. But it's probably, I don't think it, I think with the cost, it would be a whole sort of fence renovation project, either behind the post office or perhaps the whole length of Allen Park. And it wouldn't, I don't think it would be part of this project, but it could be considered. And it would maybe start with ADR or RPOA or a cost estimate, or, what would a nice looking fence cost? It may be that it's just prohibitive and we don't go any farther, but it may be that it's something to consider. RPOA did say that black chain link is more attractive than silver. So that's what's set for the moment.
Yes, I think wrought iron would certainly be much more attractive, but probably quite expensive. For that length of fence, very expensive.
Yeah, Julie, didn't you have a recent estimate for wrought iron and how many feet and how much was it?
I had actually 4 panels of my wood fence that run into a structure replaced with wrought iron for fire prevention, so that the fence isn't on fire and then it catches my garage on fire. And just for those 4 little panels was $4,000. So it's really expensive.
When we were walking the site with Joanna the other day, we were talking about how for that part behind the post office, that new green paint is so ugly. It's almost a waste to put a pretty fence there, but perhaps the whole length of Allen Park at some point, either change out that fence or put landscaping in to make it look prettier.
Yeah.
Other comments or deliberations or a motion?
Beach.
I'll move to approve.
Beach has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Beach, go ahead.
I would suppose there's no reason that the town couldn't at some later time replace that black fence with something better if we chose to.
Yes, I think so.
And if no one else wants to, I'm proposed to move approval of the plan as presented and resolution number 2238.
Did you already make the motion, Elizabeth?
I did. I can second, or Beach can second, either one.
Why don't you second, Beach? Elizabeth made the motion.
I'm seconding.
Okay.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. That takes us to item 15, council correspondence. Is there any council, and thank you, Joanna and staff, Gerhard and staff. Really appreciate you moving this forward. I'm sorry you can't start sooner than July, but I understand there are birds. So, Councilmember Breckus.
Oh, I was on the next item.
Next item? All right, correspondence, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention, and this is something I have brought up a couple times at our fire board meetings about fire insurance cancellation, because I had this experience, and I think I've mentioned it to you before, and was able to get insurance. My parents just had it, and now they're going to be paying $15,000 a year And that's after our fire board really, really helped out in our fire department in terms of, doing a quick inspection and writing a letter, which was really wonderful. But, I think what we are hearing from is that lots of people are having this problem and they're, it's not getting reported. Like if you go on Nextdoor, you're hearing a lot about it, but it's like, we don't know how widespread the problem is because there's nowhere that people are reporting it. So I was just going to say that I know, I don't know if it's going to come before the fire board. If it does, I'm happy to just report. And I think that's a good way of going about it. So I don't know that it needs to be a council item, but it could be a morning after, but you're just asking people to tell us about it so we know, or we could have it as a council item. But I think we do need to, get a little reporting on this.
So you're not asking right now to have this on the agenda, but you're just pointing out that this is an issue. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, maybe I'm reporting it as a council correspondence.
Correspondence, okay. That you hear about it from people.
It's a real big problem, and
Okay.
I think it is.
Okay. Thank you. Any other correspondence before we go on to council items? Councilmember Cool.
First of all, your father wasn't upset by having his insurance canceled, was he?
He was absolutely upset. Of course he was.
More seriously, today, the chief of the Ross Valley Fire Department sent out a report that was done by the staff of the Ross Valley Fire Department some years ago, which makes interesting reading. It's not totally up to date, but it kind of offers some comments on what's happening and what to do if it happens to you. Thank
Right.
you.
We could send that off to residents too, or provide a link or something.
Thank you. Councilmember McMillan.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the insurance cancellation. There's been several articles in the Wall Street Journal about cancellation and escalation of premiums. That is a huge issue in California. And that is something that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is going to be working on in terms of trying to connect. If you, as a homeowner, do all the defensible space improvements that the inspectors are recommending, trying to get the insurance companies not to cancel your policy. So it's a big thing on our agenda going forward.
Good.
And there's also lots of information on the Fire Safe Marin website that should be included if we're doing an article or something. There's a huge amount of information on that website.
Thank you. Any other council correspondence? Then let's move on to future council items. We've asked to put on the March agenda a discussion about the parameters for how we might move at some point to in-person meetings. Are there any other items that people would like to put on the agenda for upcoming meetings? Councilmember Breckus.
Sorry, my hand was raised from.
Oh, okay. Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.